Caroline Jones.
Diolch, Llywydd. Thank you for your statement, Cabinet Secretary. The new treatment fund has brought hope to many cancer sufferers, making drugs such as Cadsilla routinely available to NHS patients, Welsh NHS patients. Of course, it is not just cancer patients who will benefit from the new treatment fund, and it will fund more than drugs. Cabinet Secretary, while I welcome the introduction of the fund, I do have some questions about the day-to-day operation of the scheme. Clinicians who oversaw the introduction of disease-modifying drugs for MS patients state that it took over 2 years following the approval of Sativex for patients to receive it, because the infrastructure needed to administer and monitor the drug was not in place. Many of the new types of medication becoming available require close monitoring and have to be administered in a day bed. Cabinet Secretary, will the new treatments fund ensure that it's not only the cost of the medication that is taken into account, but will also ensure that the infrastructure is in place to deliver the medication? Of course, the scheme will only fund the first 12 months of treatment costs, with local health boards having to meet the ongoing cost of treatment. Cabinet Secretary, how are the local health boards being made aware of new treatments in the development pipeline so that they can plan for future funding needs? It is proving difficult to get information about what treatments are available under the scheme. And Cabinet Secretary, do you have any plans to publish a continuously updated list of available treatments so patients can be clear on what is available and whether the local health board is complying with the fund? Do you have any plans to regularly publish data on the operation of the scheme, such as the number of patients who benefit, what funding is allocated to each treatment, and the length of time taken from approval of the treatment to when it is received by patients? The fund will provide health boards with £16 million per year. Cabinet Secretary, how do you ensure that the budget is maximised, and what systems do you have in place to ensure that any overspends do not impact on other areas of patient care? Finally, Cabinet Secretary, England's Chief Medical Officer has said that cancer patients should be given whole genome screening in order to help select the best treatment for the patient. So, Cabinet Secretary, is this something you will consider, and could the new treatment fund be used to fund the initial introduction of this type of screening? Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you for the comments and questions. The last point, I think we tried to cover in the statement I made last week about our approach on precision medicine. That's a different question to the new treatment fund, and I think that's one that I'd be happy to discuss in more detail with members on a future occasion. We'll be launching our precision medicine strategy over the summer, and I'm sure it'll be a matter that members of the Health Committee and others will take a continuing interest in. It's a really significant and exciting area of development, though, but as I said, that's not really the point and the purpose of the new treatment fund. Now, on the point you raised about this not being just cancer, that's exactly where we are, and that's why we say that we're not taking a condition-specific approach, because we don't think that we should value the lives of some NHS patients more preciously than others, depending on the condition that they have. And again, to remind people again that the English Cancer Drugs Fund spent over £1.27 billion, and yet they think that only about 1 in 5 cases they could justify the use of it. So that's broadly £1 billion wasted or poorly used. We want to avoid that sort of poor use of public funds that I think we could and should be rightly criticised for if that were the approach that we chose to take in Wales. The point you make about Sativex is instructive in that we made a choice with our own appraisal process to approve Sativex for a particular group of patients. And the English system has still not got to that point. So in that sense, there is a real benefit for patients in Wales. The challenge then has been making sure that all of the infrastructure around the prescribing and support for people who are, where it's potentially clinically appropriate to prescribe Sativex is there and in place. And I know there are continuing challenges about this. Challenges within, if you like, the service wholly within Wales, but also those patients who are going to see consultants as a regular part of their treatment, where those consultants are based in England, and the challenge of those consultants making prescription choices for people where Sativex is an available choice. And there are challenges about those consultants in their desire, their willingness to make a clinically appropriate prescription. But this isn't simply the case that it's a blockbuster drug for everyone with MS. It does still have to be clinically appropriate and a proper trial of the course of treatment to be provided, because it won't work for everyone. But it is an issue that is absolutely on my radar. But again, it's instructive about what we want to try and avoid wherever possible with the new treatments fund, to make sure those infrastructure challenges are understood properly and early in advance. That also goes to your point about service planning. Part of the reason we've introduced this new treatment fund is to understand that in the first 12 months of introducing new treatments, new drugs, the first 12 months of them is difficult to plan for and to understand. That's because the additional cost that comes in and how that's then budgeted for properly through the lifetime of health boards and relevant trusts. But it's also about developing the more grown-up relationship that I described with the ABPI. I had a useful meeting with them some months ago where we agreed about understanding and sharing more information with the service on treatments in the pipeline, and understanding how the service can plan more effectively for those. So patients should benefit. We should make better use of public resources, but ultimately should still be good for those businesses as well, for the products they wish to sell to the service. And on your final the final point that I haven't covered yet, that's about publishing information. I indicated in my statement I published information at the end of summer recess. There'll be a quarterly release of funds, and I expect to publish information at least twice a year, but I'll give consideration to whether we could or should publish information more regularly than that. And that's really about understanding the data that we have and making sure it's properly robust. But I'm keen to make sure that information continues to be put into the public domain about the use of the new treatment fund and the likely benefit that patients across Wales could and should be receiving.